Hello Year 11. Today we are going to look at GCSE English Language Paper 1 and we're going to focus on question 2, the language analysis question. Now the paper that we're going to focus on for this revision session is the November 2018 paper. You can find the question paper and the insert linked on this slide. So what I would suggest you do before you go any further with this PowerPoint is pause this video so that you can go and read that insert very carefully. Remember, in the exam you would have 15 minutes to do this. So take your time and read through the extract. That's the insert link, that's the top bullet point linked resource. So take your time, read through that, and then when you've done that, unpause the video and we'll go on to the next slide. So question 2 asks you to focus on a short section from a longer passage of fiction. Hopefully you've now all read that longer passage, and we are just going to focus on a short section for question 2. Question 2 is all about close text analysis of language. You will have 10 minutes to answer this question. If you have 25% extra time, you can give yourself 12 minutes for this question though. Remember, there will be no invigilator telling you when to move on from each question, so it's important you've got a watch with you in the exam, or that you're keeping a close eye on the clock so you're monitoring your time very, very carefully. So let's have a look at the question itself. On the question paper, we will have something that looks very, very similar to this. So here it says, look in detail at this extract from lines 16 to 26 of the source. Now these lines are obviously on the insert, but they are printed here on the question paper itself as well. We have the extract that we're focusing on, and we have the question, how does the writer use language here to describe the Tyrannosaurus Rex? You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms, and you have got 8 marks for this question. For this question, there are 3 things in particular that an examiner is going to be looking for in your response. They're going to be looking to see whether you can explain, comment on, and analyse how writers use language. They're going to be looking to see if you can explain, comment, and analyse how writers achieve effects and influence readers, and they're going to be looking to see if you can use relevant subject terminology to support your views. So these are the 3 things that an examiner is going to be paying particular attention to in your writing. Your ability to unpick the words and phrases that a writer has chosen, your ability to comment on why those words and phrases or language features are particularly important in shaping meaning and creating specific effects for the reader, and looking at whether you're using appropriate terminology in doing so. So there are lots of things that we could be looking for within this short extract. We might be looking at individual words, in which case we might want to focus on the word classes that have been chosen and why that is. So we might be looking at things like adjectives, adverbs, verbs, concrete or abstract nouns, comparatives and superlatives. We might also be looking at the specific language features and techniques that have been used, and there are lots there listed on this slide. Now, of course, remember, in an exam, sometimes we get a bit nervous and we might have a mind blank and can't remember the specific name of a technique that a writer is using. Do not panic if that happens. There is nothing wrong with simply writing the word or the phrase rather than not commenting on a quotation because you can't remember if it's a simile or a metaphor. It's much better to say word or phrase and pick out the quotation you really, really want to talk about than it is that you choose a less impactful quotation because you can remember the name of the technique that is being used. So never panic if you have a mind blank and you can't remember the specific name of a technique. It's absolutely fine to write word or phrase. If you can remember, brilliant, write that down, but do not panic if you have a bit of a brain freeze. Let's have another look at the question we're focusing on today. So remember, this extract comes from lines 16 to 26 of the source, and it's really important we only pick out quotations from this section that is printed. We don't want to talk about sections from elsewhere in the text. So let's read through it, and remember we're thinking about how the writer uses language here to describe the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Whilst I read it through, you might find it helpful to start underlining or highlighting on your copy of the insert or the question paper things that you find particularly interesting. It came on great, oiled, resilient, striding legs. It towered 30 feet above half of the trees, a great evil god, folding its delicate watchmaker's claws close to its oily reptilian chest. Each lower leg was a piston, 1,000 pounds of white bone sunk in thick ropes of muscle, sheathed over in a gleam of pebbled skin like the armour of a terrible warrior. Each thigh was a ton of meat, ivory and steel mesh. And from the great breathing cage of the upper body, those two delicate arms dangled out front, arms with hands which might pick up and examine men like toys, while the snake neck coiled, and the head itself a ton of sculptured stone, lifted easily up on the sky. Its mouth gaped, exposing a fence of teeth like daggers. Its eyes rolled, ostrich eggs, empty of all expression save hunger. It closed its mouth in a death grin. It ran, its pelvic bones crushing aside trees and bushes, its taloned feet clawing damp earth, leaving prints 6 inches deep wherever it settled its weight. Now this is a brilliant passage because there's so much that we could pick out. So I'm going to start just by thinking about words and phrases within this passage. So thinking about that first bullet point of the question, words and phrases. So I might start by looking at that word towered, which instantly shows the enormity of the creature. It's quite colossal, it's huge, making it very powerful and very mighty, which for a reader creates a sense of the creature being quite intimidating. So we're thinking about what the word means and the effect that it has on the reader. So the first word I might pick out is towered. From there, I might look at the little phrase delicate arms, and I might consider there how this contrasts the intimidating towering of the word that I've just picked out. Perhaps it shows a potential vulnerability to the creature. So we might look at how, although it does seem very powerful, perhaps there's something underlying there that's a little bit different. I might also look at the word crushing towards the end of the extract. And again, this is a very powerful word that has been used. It really shows the might of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's as if it shows no mercy here. It doesn't care. It's very, very frightening. Now, there are lots and lots of other words or short phrases within this extract that I also could have picked out. It might be that as we read through on the previous slide, you underlined or highlighted different things, and that's absolutely fine. These are just 3 possible examples of things that we could look at. So that's how we might start to identify words and phrases within the extract. And it's important that before we start writing, we give ourselves approximately 2 minutes to start highlighting or underlining and just jotting down brief notes about what we might say regarding the words, the phrases, the techniques that we're picking out. So we've got words and phrases. We might then also look at language features and techniques that have been utilised. So for example, I might pick out this little short phrase, great evil God, which is quite an oxymoronic phrase, great versus evil. So we've got a bit of contrast there, perhaps creating an impression of the dinosaur being quite unpredictable. This again links to what we were saying about words and phrases, that it makes the dinosaur quite frightening. So again, thinking about what the technique suggests and the effect on the reader. I might also pick out lower leg was a piston, which is a metaphor. Remember, a metaphor is where we're comparing things but saying one thing is something it is not. Lower leg was a piston. And this is a very machine-like metaphor. It's almost as if the dinosaur is actually something mechanical. And that's quite important in linking back to that idea of lacking mercy or lacking any sense of feeling. Again, there's a kind of absence of care or compassion that we might expect of a human character. I might also pick out like the armour of a terrible warrior, which of course is a simile. And here it almost presents the dinosaur as a fighter, some sort of kind of warrior-like image. So again, that sense of kind of a fight being created. And it suggests that the dinosaur is prepared for the fight. It's got armour there connected to it, associated with it. So there's a sense that the dinosaur here has the upper hand, which again would be quite frightening. Another phrase that I might pick out is a fence of teeth like daggers, another simile that has been used within this extract. Fence, of course, suggests some sort of barrier. It could be some sort of protection, like you put a barrier or a protective force around a house or a property. So here we've got this sense that the T-Rex is well prepared to protect itself from others. So again, kind of similar to that sense of the armour in the previous simile, there's this sense of kind of the dinosaur being ready for a fight. And of course, we've got the comparison to daggers, which we know are weapons, again creating quite a frightening feel for a reader. It presents a very bloodthirsty kind of image of this dinosaur. So linking back to what we've said about it lacking mercy and only caring about itself. So once we've taken a couple of minutes to look back through the extract and identify techniques, words, phrases that we find particularly interesting, and remember I've picked out some, but there are loads and loads more within that short extract that we could have picked out as well. We then want to think about how we structure our answer. And the easiest way to do that is to use the what, how, why method within our paragraphs. We're aiming for 2 really detailed paragraphs here. If we can write 3 in that 10-minute slot, brilliant. But if we've got 2 really thoughtful paragraphs, that's absolutely fine. Remember, on the question paper, they will always give you more space than you need. You won't need to go beyond 2 sides, and you might not even use the full 2 sides, particularly if you've got slightly smaller handwriting. So never panic if you think, oh, they've given me 3 or 4 pages and I've only written 2. That's ample. So the question, remember, asks us, how does the writer use language here to describe the Tyrannosaurus Rex? We can break our paragraph down into 3 components: what the writer is doing, how the writer is doing that, and why it is necessary for the writer to do these things. And if we're considering these 3 elements, then we know that we are focusing on the 3 things that we spoke about earlier in terms of what an examiner is looking for. So the first thing that we want to consider is that what is the writer doing here? So questions that we might ask ourselves here. we might be thinking what picture of the Tyrannosaurus Rex is presented here, and we might be thinking about what adjectives of our own we could use to describe it. We might think about what emotions Bradbury, the writer, might be trying to provoke in the reader. And of course, we need to think what evidence leads us to think this way. We know that we need quotations to support our ideas. We know that we need short, precise quotations. If we're only going to unpick one word, that's the word we need to quote. We don't need to quote a whole sentence. So the first part of our paragraph is going to deal with the what the writer is doing. And from there, we can then start to unpick how the methods that the writer has used help present that idea. So for example, how do the words and phrases Bradbury chooses help us understand what type of creature the dinosaur is? Or how do the language features or techniques help us understand what type of creature the dinosaur is? How does Bradbury's language choice make the reader feel? So we're thinking about what the words or the techniques mean. We're thinking about what they might make us think about on a slightly wider scale. Are there any things that we associate with certain words or phrases, and what that consequently makes the reader feel or think? From looking at our what and how, we're then led on to think about our why. So this is where we want to start asking some questions of the text. Why do you think that Bradbury wants us to see the dinosaur in this way? Why might presenting the Tyrannosaurus Rex this way help set up later events or character reactions? Because remember, although we're focusing in on this small extract, having read the whole of the insert, we do know what happens later. So it's really important that we think about joining some of those dots. And I've put that word might in bold because remember, the joy of English is that there aren't specific right answers. If we can support our own ideas with evidence from the text, then our ideas are correct. So we want to show that actually different people might think different ways. So this is a possible interpretation rather than the only interpretation. We have a look at an example paragraph now. So we're going to think about how we would construct a paragraph, and I'm going to start with the what. So remember that question is, how does the writer use language here to describe the Tyrannosaurus Rex? So my what says, Bradbury presents the Tyrannosaurus as a powerful and intimidating creature that towered over everything in the jungle. So I've used my own words, powerful and intimidating, but I've supported that with evidence from the text, that word towered that I picked out when I was looking at words and phrases. And I've embedded that into my sentence. So rather than saying we see this in the quotation, I've used that word as part of my own sentence, so that when we read it out loud, we can't actually hear the quotation. It feels like a whole sentence. So I've got my what. From there, I need to think about how this word towered makes the dinosaur seem powerful and intimidating. So I've gone on to say, by choosing the word towered, the writer shows how enormous the creature is. It is clearly very mighty and imposing. This would instill fear in the reader, as the power of the Tyrannosaurus is like nothing we have ever experienced. So I've considered why this word is specifically used, what it makes us understand about the dinosaur itself, why towered helps us see that it's very powerful and intimidating. And I've also thought about the effect it has on readers. It instills fear in the reader. So I've thought about what the word means and suggests, and I've thought about the consequential effect on the reader as well. From there, I can then start to think about why Bradbury has chosen to present this dinosaur in this manner. Perhaps Bradbury wants the reader to fear the dinosaur so we can understand the later actions of the characters. If we are frightened by the Tyrannosaurus just reading the passage, we are more likely to understand why Eccles realises he underestimated the power of the dinosaur and panics later in the extract. Now, I've used that word perhaps. Remember, we talked about the idea that there's no one single right answer. So by using words like perhaps or maybe or might or could, we're showing an examiner that we understand there are lots of ways of reading a text. So I've used that word perhaps to indicate that to an examiner. And I've focused on the impact of this powerful and intimidating creature and what it does to later events. If we are frightened by it now, we're more likely to understand the later panic that we see. So we've got there a what, how and why paragraph. So that's a kind of basic level paragraph that we're aiming for. We could, however, upgrade this paragraph. If I wanted to upgrade it, we can see here in purple what I've added. So the first thing that you'll notice is that I've included the word class. So in the original paragraph, I said by choosing the word, and now I've actually identified what the word class is. So Bradbury presents the Tyrannosaurus as a powerful and intimidating creature that towered over everything in the jungle. By choosing the participle towered, the writer shows how enormous the creature is. It is clearly very mighty and imposing. I've then gone on to extend my analysis by thinking about another layer of meaning. In fact, it is so powerful it can turn a verb into an adjective. That's what a participle is. The fact the dinosaur is almost compared to a physical tower also suggests its power and strength is immovable. It is not going to be easy to defeat this creature, like it is not easy to topple a tower. So I've developed my analysis by thinking about why the participle has been chosen, why that was necessary, and then I've gone on to explore another interpretation of towered. So rather than just having one possible meaning, I want to be aiming, if I'm upgrading my writing, to look at 2 or 3 possible interpretations. I then went on to talk again about the effect on the reader, and then at the end I've added a little bit to my why. So remember, the why started, perhaps Bradbury wants the reader to fear the dinosaur so we can understand the later actions of the characters. If we are frightened by the Tyrannosaurus just reading the passage, we're more likely to understand why Eccles realises he underestimated the power of the dinosaur and panics later in the extract. I've then added, this might encourage us to empathise with Eccles rather than condemn him. So I've gone back to that focus on the reader's relationship with the text and how we then feel as readers. So that's an example of how I might upgrade my answer through extending my analysis and through extending my exploration of why the writer wants to present this creature in a certain way. What I'm going to ask you to do now is spend 5 minutes writing your own what, how, why paragraph. So I'm going to start the timer. You can see in the top right there's a cream circle. That over the next 5 minutes is going to fill itself in purple, and when it's completely purple, your 5 minutes will be up. So your 5 minutes will be for you to go back to that little extract, pick out something else that you want to talk about, and use the what, how, why prompts that we've got on this slide to help you write your own paragraph. And remember, if you're really aiming for as many marks as possible, think about how you offer 2 or 3 interpretations of the writer's choice of words or phrases or language features. Okay, let's start the timer. and that's your 5 minutes up. So if you want to finish the sentence that you are writing, and then we're going to have a look at this slide. So this slide, and you might want to pause it, which is absolutely fine, talks through the ways in which you can self-assess your writing. Okay, so have a look through each of these two boxes. So one is where you're looking at all the things that you will have done brilliantly, and then on the right hand side you've got all the things that we might still be able to improve to make our writing even better. So if we look at the box on the left, which is our WWW, so you might be identifying strengths such as, I've used my own words to explain what the Tyrannosaurus Rex is like. I have embedded a carefully chosen quotation to support my ideas. I have identified the technique Bradbury uses to help present the dinosaur. I have explained how the word or the phrase or the language feature helps us understand the Tyrannosaurus Rex. If you're focusing on upgrading your answer, you might be looking at I have offered more than one reason why I think the word or the phrase or the language feature helps us understand the Tyrannosaurus Rex. You might also be thinking about, I've explored how the reader feels about the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I've considered why the writer might want us to think a certain way. And lastly, I have examined why presenting the dinosaur in this manner might influence later events. So read back through your paragraph and identify all the brilliant things that you have done in your writing. So don't stop at one WWW, give yourself as many as are applicable. Now is the time to be really, really positive about your writing. When you've done that, have a look at the things that you perhaps could work on a little bit more. And this might be easy because you might be spotting which of the WWWs are missing. So each of those has a corresponding target. So for example, I could use my own words to explain what the Tyrannosaurus Rex is like. Perhaps you've given one layer of analysis, but you could be looking at upgrading your writing. So it might be that you're picking, I could offer more than one reason why I think the word or the phrase or the language feature helps us to understand the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So take your time to then work out one or two EBWs that you think actually you could work on if you were writing another response. What you might like to do to then put all of this into practice is have a think about the what, how, why skills, the process of identifying information. And on this slide, you've got links to another practice paper. So the first link takes you to the question paper. The second link takes you to the insert. So you need to read the whole insert, not just the section for question 2. And then the last section will take you through to the mark scheme so that you can see example paragraphs for each level of the mark scheme once you have written your own paragraphs. So take your time, and you might find it really helpful to now put everything we've talked through in this revision session into practice with a fresh paper. And remember, you can always send a paragraph to your teacher for them to have a look at. If you have any questions about anything that we've gone through today, do not hesitate to get in touch. Thank you very much for your time listening.